Hey everybody, thank you guys for coming out, really appreciate it. I'm Griffin Cohen, I'm the lead audio designer for Beyond Earth.
I'm Geoff Knorr, lead composer on Beyond Earth, done a lot of stuff with the Civ V releases, expansion packs with the original music.
And we're going to talk about a little bit of Civilization V, how we approach the music, and a little bit about the sound design, and then move more into Beyond Earth and kind of the differences between the two and our approach to both projects.
So, a typical Civ game would be based in history, based in kind of how human civilization has progressed from, say, 4000 BC to just beyond where we are now in current history. Everything that we have to base that game off of, we know about at least somewhat. And so the audio design and the music from Civ V really comes from that. So for Civ V, we knew we wanted to have a consistent kind of sound across the game, but have that cultural sound be a part of it. So orchestral would set that kind of even tone across everything, but then infuse it with these flares of different ethnicities, the different cultures that you would run across. We wanted it to loosely follow the gameplay state, basically war or peace. And a huge goal that we had is, as a Civ game, it's extremely replayable, and it's very different every time that you play. So you're going to end up playing it many, many times, and ideally, we don't want the music to become too repetitive, too grating, that it's really a part of the experience. So we really tried as hard as we could in Civ V to make it not grating, to make it part of the experience as a whole. For the sound design, it's a more literal kind of cinematic sound design approach that we took. You think about Civ Rev, where it's a more kind of cartoonish, playful sound. We wanted Civ V to have a more serious kind of tone to it in terms of sound design. And part of that was using native speakers so that you're actually hearing the languages that the leaders spoke or may have spoke in some cases when we don't really know what some of the ancient civilizations would have sounded like. We took our best educated guess. So for the leader music, we decided to use, since it's based in history, we decided, well, let's base our music off of something that already exists that's a part of these cultures. So we decided to use themes that, if it's a country that still exists, they would hear that theme and recognize it, or it would be something that they're proud of, that there would be that kind of national pride in the melody, or in the case of an ancient Civ, something that's well known in history that a historian or that they would recognize as being well known, to base the music off of existing material. And of course, to follow the gameplay state, we'd have war and peace themes. In addition to these leader themes, which were immersed with mainly interaction with leaders, we had expansive licensed music. There's no way we could have written 15 hours of original music in the scope of the development. So we had to go searching for pieces that would fit with the orchestral, ethnically infused, but not solely ethnic feel that we were going with. And we ended up with 4 regions to try to piece licensed music into: European, which included the United States, because we're kind of more European in our sensibilities than what we call the Americas in a Civ game, which would be more of your Native American type music. And then Middle Eastern and Asian, which included Indian as well. And we ended up, after months and months of searching and listening and deciding which pieces should go in, which shouldn't, with I think around 15 hours or so of music, with the idea that this would help fill out the playlists and make it not grating, that there would be enough interest there that it would just become part of the world, that it would immerse you there. And of course, those were divided into war, peace, and we had this section called neutral, which were pieces we felt could go either towards peace or war, to basically make those playlists a lot longer. And the actual gameplay, the music behavior is, we like to think of it as exploration-based. So you start your game, you hear your piece theme, because that's all you know right now is your Civ. And then as you start to expand outward to explore the world, you'll hear other regions, licensed music, you'll hear other leaders' music, and so that it kind of becomes this more grand, expansive playlist as you explore more of the world. And of course, it follows the game state at the same time.
So moving on to Beyond Earth, we had some pretty different design decisions and goals we wanted to achieve. So right off the bat, the kind of broadest scope, the setting is, of course, completely different. So we're moving from kind of a purely historical setting that takes you through known history, and we're starting in, you know, a few hundred years into the future. And so how do we capture that? It's a Civ game, so we knew we wanted to keep the orchestral music alive and well, but we wanted to kind of infuse it with electronic elements and some kind of otherworldly elements as well. A really important part was making sure that the themes present in the game were going to be really, really memorable. So our goal was to write melodies that the player could kind of walk away from the game and hum or whistle in their head. If that happens, then we did our jobs. We knew the music we wanted the music to be tied to the biomes that you're playing on, so that each planet would have its own theme and developments of that theme. And that kind of helped tie into the narrative of the game. Where Civ V was kind of more exploration-based, we wanted the music in Beyond Earth to more closely follow your Civ story and the story of kind of humanity in a greater sense. And so tying the music to specific planets that you're on was one of the ways that we did that. And just a note about the sound design, we wanted the sound design to help inform the affinity choices that you're making. Affinities being one of the biggest systems in Beyond Earth. And so kind of choosing where your civilization is going to go down technologically, we wanted the sound design to support that. And as far as the leaders go, it's a little different in the sense that even though the leaders are all, they're internationally represented, they all speak, for the most part, they speak a mix of English and their native tongues, and they have a lot of kind of native idiosyncrasies in their language. This kind of helps give them a lot of character.
For the biome-specific themes, like Griffin was saying, we decided to go with one theme per biome that we would develop to follow the narrative, with the idea that it would be something that kind of develops as your Civ develops on the alien world. We tried to choose unique instruments or unique electronics that would give that biome its own kind of musical sound, that you would really feel a difference as you play as different biomes. The soundtrack would sound a little bit different. And we ended up going with a theme and variations type of design, where early in the game you would hear a very clear presentation of the theme, and then as you hit important milestones through the game, you would hear variations of that theme that kind of emphasize those milestones.
So we'll play an example now of one of the themes of the biomes for the fungal planet. And we're going to show you throughout the rest of the presentation some variations on it.
So one of the obviously unique parts of the fungal set would be the solo cello featured. And you'll hear that throughout the variations, that the solo cello will come back. Just kind of felt to fit the fungal biome for some reason with the kind of, you think of wood, kind of moist wood or something. Something seemed to connect there. That's why I made that decision. Besides, I just love the cello. So, and there's just a little side note about the theme. You know, we had electronics that are kind of playing along with the orchestra, and all of this was to click track originally. We were in the recording sessions, and it just needed to breathe more. It needed to sound more natural, and we ended up just removing the click track and letting the solo cellists lead that theme for this presentation. You know, the first presentation of the theme that you hear in the game, and it just ended up working a lot better. It made a lot more work for me later because then I had to go and basically redo a click track to his playing. But I think you can get a sense that it sounded very natural and kind of intimate in a way. That this is your new place where you're going to develop a new civilization.
So along with these biome-specific themes, there's kind of two other big parts of the soundtrack that we're going to talk about more, but just to touch on them. So we have biome-specific themes. We also have ambient music that's mostly electronic. There are also variations on these same themes, but kind of tied more closely to the environment, as you'll see in a bit. And then we have a set of common music as well that's biome agnostic. So you'll hear that regardless of the biome that you're playing on. And it helps fill out the soundtrack and plays into some other parts of the music as well. So the way the music's structured in the game, it's kind of a few of systems at play here. The first kind of overarching one is we're able to divide the music into what we call early, middle, and late music. And this is supposed to kind of follow your trajectory through the game. So in the early game, we wanted specific types of music to be able to play. But by the time you get to the late part of the game where you're kind of more familiar with the planet, there's more stuff open to you, you can visibly just see more, we introduce new music throughout the course of it. And so these playlists are cumulative, so by the time you get to the end of the game, you're able to hear a lot more different types of music, but the priority is always given to new stuff coming in, so the kind of overall types of music that you're hearing will change over the course of your game. What kind of wrench in the works for this is what we call the event system. And this lets us tie specific pieces of music to kind of milestones that we defined that your civilization may or may not reach over the course of a game. So just to give you an example, the first time your Civ launches a satellite should be a pretty momentous occasion. And so that'll interrupt the current music playing and play this kind of specific track we curated and in some cases specifically composed for those events. And we'll show you an example of those in just a bit. And I thought this might be of interest, or it just might be thoroughly confusing. But just to give you a little inside look at how this is actually structured and controlled, this is a little XML file that I have. And if you look, you guys can see my mouse. If you look here, I have a little entry that says fungus satellite launched. And this little event here says, on the fungal planet, the first time my Civ launches a satellite, play a specific piece of music. And likewise, I have one down here called Colossal Unit Spotted. So that's, again, on the fungal planet, play a specific piece of music the first time I encounter a colossal alien unit. And usually that's the first time you explore a little farther than you may be able to and find a siege worm, and then it smacks you in the face. And there's a specific piece of music for that. And just likewise, this is just another screen grab of this, but I'm able to define, like I said, the music into early, middle, and late stages. So I have a little flag here that says game_early, which kind of categorizes it into that part of the game. And I have tags for middle and late. So it basically tells the game, don't play this music before X turn number. And turn number is sort of the thing that we're measuring there. And that'll change depending on the speed of the game that you're playing.
So for the event system, we had, as Griffin was saying, specific musical cues that bring back your main theme that would play to really reinforce those key moments and to give you that sense of story, of narrative. So I wanted to give a few examples of what we did musically as these variations. The first one with the fungal, using that same fungal theme that we heard earlier. I want to play what it becomes when you launch your first satellite. So the game is starting to progress, you're getting this sense of momentum a little bit, and so the main cello theme that we heard now has a little bit more kind of pulsing rhythmic nature to it, and the orchestra is going to join in a little bit more than it did in the presentation of the theme, and hopefully with that sense that it's following what you're doing in the actual game. So let's hear a little bit of that. One of the, probably one of my favorite events that we were able to add that we could attach music to was imminent victory, that you're about to win. You know, I've always felt like musically that should be a big payoff moment. Like, you know, this makes me feel really epic and awesome right now. I'm about to win. And musically, something should happen there. It should feel very musically satisfying in addition to all the other satisfying things that it feels when you win the game. So we were able to tie that in. And you know, this is like the theme in all of its glory, which is fun to do musically too. So here's a little piece of what the theme becomes when you win, or imminently going to win.
So just a fun note about that one, the way we have that hooked up is anytime you get to the last stage in a victory condition, one of these big triumphant pieces of music specific to your biome plays, and it's just a grand summary of the theme that you've been hearing throughout the entire game, like in its full representation, and hopefully you do win and it leads you into the victory screen. It's a devastating moment when that doesn't happen. But feels pretty great when it all works out for you. So we have about 12, maybe a dozen events in the game now. So I'm going to show you an example of the music changing when you launch a satellite, just so you can kind of notice it a little bit. And like I said, one of them is the first time you run into a colossal alien unit. It's always a nice surprise. The first time you build a planetary wonder, which is this big, awesome wonder that you have to sacrifice a piece of your terrain to put on there. And those are tied into the victory conditions. And so all these are kind of helping build the narrative of your game, which is really nice. So I'll show you a video now, and you'll notice, you'll hear a little bit of ambient music playing for the fungal planet, and then when I launch the satellite, listen for the change in music. And this one in particular, there's a few events that can randomly pick between a number of tracks, so that's why it might sound a little different. But. So it's subtle change, but there's a lot of those kind of going on throughout the game, and hopefully they interject at just the right moments. We have orchestral electronic tracks, but we also have ambient electronic tracks, and they both serve to reinforce the theme of the planet that you're on. The ambient music is a little different in that it's more closely tied to the early, middle, and late game states that we talked about before. So I composed them very, very specifically to fully represent this is your planet in the early stages of the game, your planet in the middle and late stages of the game. And they're sort of informed and supported by the ambient sounds in the planet itself to try to hopefully connect you more to the place that you're on and give you a good sense of setting and place. So I'll show you an example of that. This will be a little snapshot, 20 seconds or so, of the early, middle, and late variations for the fungal planet. And just some things to listen for. In general, the early variations, they're less metered, they're more atmospheric. I wanted to drive up the kind of scariness and tension factor that you feel early in the game. There's a lot of threats out there and beyond Earth in the beginning of the game, and you might notice that if you've had a chance to play it yet back there. So I wanted the music to kind of drive up that tension a little bit. And by contrast, the late music is a lot more structured and organized. It's more positive sounding generally, and there's more identifiable instruments, some piano and brass mixed in as well. And then the middle variation is kind of a direct split between those two things. So it'll have some dissonance in there still. It's kind of structured, kind of not. So see if you can listen for some of that stuff in the example here. The middle. And the late. Set for the planets kind of follow this template of sounds that I created. And each one sort of uses the same sounds, but in kind of different, twisted ways throughout to try to kind of connect them over the course of a game. And then the last part that we consider an important part of the music is actually the use of silence. So we purposely made a larger amount of silence programmed in between music tracks in the game. And this leaves room for the ambience of the planet that you're on to come through. And we decided that this was going to be really important early on in the game, again, to drive up that tension, make you feel a little lonely and alone on that new planet of yours. There's a lot of fog of war around you. You don't know what's out there. And silence is sometimes more efficient at communicating that than music is. So. And just a few notes about the sound design. So I mentioned before that we use the sound design to reinforce the idea of affinity. So each affinity has its kind of own sound identity. And these reinforce, of course, the look of the units and the visual effects. So I play some examples. On the left here, we have a Supremacy Marine unit, and on the right, a Harmony. And I'll play some audio files or kind of snapshots of some of the sounds associated with these affinities. So the Supremacy one, you'll hear a lot of electricity kind of sounds, machinery, servos, a lot of distorted, glitched out kind of explosions and stuff. And by contrast, the Harmony uses the miasma of the planet as a weapon. So a lot of their sounds are more wet, kind of gaseous and acidy. I'll show you a little video putting that in context. Some of these units attacking some poor little aliens.
So just to bring everything to a close, we wanted the whole game to have a consistent sound, from sound design to music to ambient music to all these decisions. We wanted to have this kind of consistent feel, this consistent tone as you're progressing through. So just wanted to play a quick example of how a template of kind of sounds ended up being the sound of Beyond Earth, if you will, with one of the pieces you'll hear late game, which uses the theme that's used in the opening movie. So we'll play a few layers just quickly here. The first, you'll hear just the synths that are in the piece. And I would say this is the unique kind of electronic elements that are used throughout the soundtrack. And now I want to play just the orchestra to see what those electronics were kind of complementing and supplementing. We'll hear the orchestra by itself. We also wanted to use the choir to kind of emphasize those hit points. So now we'll add a little bit of choir in there, electronics and orchestra, into the final mix of what it would become. So hopefully that gives you a little sense of how we layered things, used a template of sounds to kind of give this consistent tone and feel across all of the music. So.
Thank you guys very much for coming out. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.